All right, so we're going to move on to one team who, I'm a big fan of having Leeds in the Premier League. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because I grew up in England and obviously in the 80s and 90s, and Leeds was such a big team. They're always one of those teams that when they're in the Premier League, I think is a good thing for the Premier League. I think if you go on, like Newcastle, passionate, diehard fans that really are committed to their team. And, I do love it when they are in the Premier League. And I do hope this is one of the teams that do stay up, because I think the Premier League is just a better place with them. I also think the same about Sheffield Wednesday. And, unfortunately, you see what's happening to them at the moment. But I'm glad that Leeds are back in it. I'm, interested in their approach. Because, again, I think they might have learned. But I have questions on their manager. I don't know if he's good enough for the Premier League, but that's for our preview show of the season. But Leeds have been busy, particularly this week. The big, obviously, we'll start with the big one. Sean Longstaff from Newcastle, obviously a Geordie boy. 12 million plus add-ons. I think he's crucial to what they do this year. I think he's absolutely crucial. I think it's good for him. He's obviously going to be playing full time. I think he'll start every game. I don't think he's had that luxury in Newcastle the last 2 years, obviously with Newcastle's arrival of money and some of the players in that midfield in Newcastle. And I think this is a down and dirty, gritty player that every team needs. And I think this is a fantastic signing for them.
Oh, for sure. I wanted Sean to come to Toronto. I wanted to see the Longstaff brothers reunited here. So, I had selfish reasons for that, but that's definitely going to be a big addition. And I'll touch on their coach in a sec, because I actually think he does have Premier League experience with
Norwich. Yes, Norwich. And then he got fired, which I just question some of his decisions at Norwich, and that's what kind of leads me. But we'll save that for the preseason special.
Yes, but I think he's learned a lot from that time and that experience. So I think he will be better for that. But again, when you're looking at the kind of players Leeds have brought in, they kind of went similar to what Burnley have done. Smart signings. Whether it be free signings, whether it be, like outside of Anton Stash, who I think that was their big money spend so far.
That's getting confirmed today. I'm just going to put that.
Okay. So
it's been confirmed today. From all accounts, it is a done deal. Hoffenheim's happy. The jury is interesting on him. I do think, he's obviously a defensive midfielder. And, one of the things is, I have it down here is he brings control and work rate, and we'll add alongside Matty Longstaff, Sean Longstaff, these too many Longstaffs. I think they'll perform quite a solid wall in front of that back four. And I think that's kind of what you need to do in the Premier League when you're a team that's just got promoted. You need to protect that back four. And so I think it's a good addition. I just don't know what his ceiling is. Again, like I was reading some Hoffenheim supporters' views on him, and they obviously hold him quite highly. And then there's other ones that says, he's got the ceiling for him to be amazing is not that high. So, but at the end of the day, I think if you've got guys that will put a shift in and week out in the Premier League, we've seen it before in teams like Brighton, and that you can survive because you can protect that back four from being cut apart by, obviously the uber talented teams.
Yeah. And then, you've got, like I said, two solid guys helping the defensive back or the defensive line. And, you have, the first signing, Aka Bijol from Udinese, like he'll help strengthen that back line. You have another center back in Sebastian Borneau from Wolfsburg. He's 6'3", physical presence. Those four players, before we get into the other ones, are really going to help them. Then I guess, Gabriel, Gudmundsson from Lille, left back.
I like him. He is
right?
He's like you know what? You can tell what this Leeds team's going to be. It's going to be down and dirty and gritty and it's
defensively sound.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what he's going for, right? So you got to get some goals. That's my Leeds thing is where's the goals going to come from? And I think yesterday Patrick Bamford left Leeds. I think yesterday he was released or he went somewhere else. I hadn't watched. I just saw a couple of goodbye tweets. I'm a big Patrick Bamford fan. A shame he got injured. Obviously, he came through the Forest system, but I just think he was one of those players. If he wasn't so injured, he'd be a top Premier League striker. But he just can never stay healthy.
See, I don't think I think he's good. I just don't think he's a top striker. I think part of it is his own, like he's a natural talent, but does he love the game the way some of these other strikers do?
I think he does. I just don't think his body's one way and he's another way. I just don't think. I think if you look at his injuries over the years, I think he's definitely, it's taken its toll, and he plays with a smile on his face, and I think he's one of those guys that just he can score your goals out of nothing, and I think they are hard to find, especially in the Premier League. And I think if I look at this Leeds signings, and I do like the Goodmanson one. I think the Longstaff one's good because those are the ones that you kind of need to have. You need to outwork a lot of teams. And when you have some teams that are lazy and have been lazy over the last few years, you've seen it, right? You look at Manchester United, that team's lazy. They don't track back. Teams like Leeds will get at them. And it's funny because I say that Leeds and United drew yesterday 0-0 in a preseason friendly. So, everyone's getting on United's case about it because they couldn't beat Leeds. But I think Leeds outworked them. And I think Leeds will grind some teams down. Again, as with any team that comes into the Premier League, the biggest question is where are the goals coming from?
Yeah.
And, Leeds are spending money. Like, they did sign, I didn't put them on this list. They did sign a couple other players for their academy. They put, don't quote me, but 6 to 7 million on players to go into their academy to work. And I think that's a good idea. But I think the biggest thing for me is they need someone up top to really absolutely hammer home some goals to help them.
Well, could you see a player like Vardy joining, either a Leeds or any of the teams that got promoted?
It would make sense.
Right? Like, we know he can score. He's got plenty of experience. And, I think he probably feels he still has a year or two left in him within the Premier League. So, a team like Leeds, a team like Burnley, who will need to get, some scoring. Could that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's generally, Jamie Vardy. I think he'll end up in the States. I do think he will end up in MLS. I think he's looking for a payday. Obviously, he's got investments in the US is it Phoenix or Arizona or one of those?
Well, I know he had invested in a club, but I haven't paid too much attention to where.
I just feel he's going to go there unless somebody, really comes in as a big name. I just don't. I don't know. That's just my vibe on Vardy. But Leeds obviously had a great season last year. They scored a lot of goals last year, right? It's not like they were.
But it's not the Premier League. That's
that's my argument. That's like you do need someone that's going to come in that can score in the Premier League, and there is guys out there that can score that are available. Could I see a Calvert-Lewin end up at Leeds? It would make sense.
Well, he is looking for a team,
and he is. A guy on a physical team that can grind, that can play well. Like if he's fit, he's decent, right? You remember Arsenal were in for him for a long time when he was banging them in and he was on form and he was playing for England and stuff like that. There is a player in there. Again, he's another one that just can't stay healthy. Does a team like Leeds take a flyer on him? I don't know, maybe.
But 1 year, 2 deal.
Yeah, 1 year, 2 deal, right? And just kind of see what he can offer you, right? If he can stay fit and score some goals for you, then I don't think it's a bad thing. But from a starting standpoint, I think Leeds, I think are doing a solid job. I think at the end of the day, you can see what they're trying to build. And I think that's, we mentioned it about Burnley, when you start looking at teams that have made plans for the future, short-term, long-term, you can see that their ownership is doing the right things. And I think that's a positive because there's a lot of teams that you and I talk about on on WhatsApp constantly. And I'm like, what are they doing? Like, we have no clue what they're trying to achieve, right? And I look at teams, you know, selling players like crazy, and then you're like, okay, you've not got anybody in yet. Like, what's the plan? Like, so, you know, yeah, it is still early. But I do think, you know, this is a good start. And, you know, everyone's like, oh, they signed 6 players already and it's over 30 million. Yeah, I think, you know, I think it's a good start, but I think this is what you have to do in the Premier League to survive. But I just think from, you know, from Leeds' standpoint, I think they just need to figure out where the goals are going to come from and can they score in the Premier League. I think defensively they might be a lot more solid than they were last time. And I think maybe, to your point, Daniel Farke has sat there and gone, you know what? I tried to play a certain way with Norwich and got carved open easy. And
Yep.
maybe we do it a little bit different with Leeds. But it'll be interesting to see.
Well, I mean, building out from the back is never a bad thing, right? Strengthening your back line will help in a league like the Premier League. And it's just now it's going to be a matter of finding out the right piece that can help your attack, right? Because that's always been the teams that get promoted. Their biggest struggle is putting the ball in the back of the net, right? Like, yeah, you can play great defensive setup and hold teams till like the 70th, 80th minute goalless. But if they are able to find a way to break that back line and you don't have that ability to even on the counterattack, you become, you know, you're going to keep dropping points and will eventually get relegated. So for how great you are strengthening your team defensively, all these teams will still need to find that diamond in the rough that can, you know, put the ball in the back of the net consistently.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Subscribe, leave comments, and again, smash that like button.